There are seasons in a man's life when everything becomes quiet without warning. The calls slow down. The support fades. The confidence you once had doesn't feel as solid anymore. You keep going because that's what you've always done. But deep down, you feel the weight. You don't talk about it. You don't explain it. You just carry it alone. And in that silence, a question starts to surface. What if this season isn't about losing everything? What if it's about being led somewhere deeper? What if the moment you feel most alone is the moment God is drawing closest, not to take from you, but to rebuild you from the inside out? There comes a moment in a man's life when everything he leaned on is quietly removed. Not all at once, but enough that he feels exposed. The friends who promised loyalty slowly fade. The money that once made him feel secure no longer answers his calls. The plans he trusted begin to collapse, and suddenly he's standing alone, staring at the remains of what he thought defined him. This isn't cruelty. This isn't punishment. This is a calling. Because as long as a man has options, he avoids the deeper work. As long as he has something to fall back on, he never fully looks up. God doesn't strip a man to shame him. He strips him to meet him, to pull him out of noise, out of false strength, and into a place where nothing remains but truth. When God becomes all a man has left, that's when faith stops being an idea and becomes real. Because until that moment, faith is often just words spoken when life is comfortable. But when every door closes, when there is no backup plan, no one left to call, no place left to run, a man is forced to face what he truly believes. In that silence, excuses disappear. Pride has nothing to hide behind. Strength runs out. And that's when the heart finally learns dependence. Not on skill, not on hustle, not on people, but on God alone. This is where most men feel exposed and uncomfortable. Yet this is where clarity is born. Because when God is the only support left, a man begins to discover that God was never meant to be an addition to his life. He was meant to be the foundation. What feels like isolation in that season is not abandonment. It is training. A man often interprets silence as rejection. But God uses silence to shape him. The loss, the distance, the unanswered prayers, they are not signs of failure. They are signs of preparation. God is not tearing a man down to destroy him. He is removing what made him dependent on the wrong things. In the quiet, a man is forced to confront himself without distraction. No applause, no validation, just honesty. This is where endurance is built. This is where character is formed. What feels like the end of a chapter is actually the breaking of old patterns. Because before God builds a man up for what's ahead, he first strips away what no longer belongs in his life. Throughout history, God has always shaped men in hidden places before trusting them with greater responsibility. He worked on men long before the world ever saw them. David was not prepared for a crown in a palace, but in caves where no one applauded him. Job's strength was not revealed in abundance, but in loss. Moses did not meet his purpose in comfort, but in a wilderness where he had nothing but obedience. God does not rush a man into visibility. He refines him in obscurity, because what is built in silence lasts longer than what is built in noise. The hidden season is not wasted time. It is where a man learns humility, restraint, and dependence. And when the moment comes, he doesn't rise unprepared. He rises grounded, steady, and anchored in God alone. As long as a man has someone to lean on, he often mistakes support for strength. But when there is no one left to carry him, something deeper awakens. He learns how to stand, not in his own power, but in God's. This is where real strength is revealed, not in control, but in surrender. Miracles don't happen when a man has everything figured out. They happen when he admits he doesn't. When provision runs out, God shows himself as provider. When answers disappear, God becomes direction. Dependence unlocks power because it creates space for God to move. And in that space, a man discovers that weakness was never the problem. Independence was. In that place, loneliness begins to change its meaning. It no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes intimacy. When the noise fades and distractions fall away, a man starts to hear God more clearly than ever before. Prayer deepens, not because it has to, but because there is finally room for it. Even Jesus withdrew to lonely places, not out of weakness, but out of alignment. The most honest conversations with God don't happen in crowds. They happen in quiet moments, when a man has nothing left to perform and no one left to impress. Tears become prayers. Silence becomes sacred. And what once felt unbearable becomes holy ground. Because loneliness, in God's hands, is not meant to break a man. It is meant to bring him closer than he's ever been. Fire has a way of revealing what a man is truly made of. Trials don't exist to destroy him. They exist to refine him. Betrayal, rejection, delay, and disappointment all feel unbearable in the moment, but none of it is wasted. God uses pressure to burn away what cannot go with a man into his next season. Joseph learned this in prison. Forgotten by people, defended only by God, he was being shaped for authority long before he ever stepped into it. Every closed door, every painful wait, every unanswered question was strengthening his character. A man doesn't walk out of the fire the same way he walked in. He comes out clearer, steadier, and stronger, not hardened, but purified, ready for a calling that requires depth, not just desire. When a man finally loses what he thought he couldn't live without, a hard truth begins to surface. God was never competing with those things. He was waiting beneath them. Comfort fades. Applause disappears. Security shifts. And in that stripping, a man discovers something unshakable. God is not the last option when everything else fails. He is the source that never fails. Paul understood this while chained, when freedom and companionship were gone, yet peace remained. Because what sustains a man is not what he holds in his hands, but who holds his heart. When everything else is taken, God doesn't feel smaller. He feels clearer, stronger, sufficient. And in that realization, grief starts to loosen.